and welcome back to TV4. I'm Zarith and my partner for today, Dayana. So tonight, we'll lead with a story that has raised serious concern about safety at Beckhamland theme park. Our investigation delves into whether the park breached its duty of care, putting visitors at risk. Strap in as we unravel the details of this developing story, examining the legal implication and potential consequence for the theme park. But first, let's hear the further news about the issue happened.
Imagine a scenario where a 12-year-old boy, Danish, went to Beckhamland, a theme park, with his family. Danish decided to ride a roller coaster with his brother, Alif, and sat next to him. As the roller coaster started moving, Danish realized that his seatbelt buckle had suddenly came off. This caused Danish to become anxious, and despite attempting to hold onto the seatbelt, he ended up being thrown out of the roller coaster. As a result of the fall, Danish suffered injuries to his head and body, including a broken leg. Danish parents are considering filing a lawsuit against Beckhamland Company, alleging negligence and a breach of the duty of care.
And now, let's hear the further explanation and comment from the legal expert at Dania and Zah Solicitors who handle the case, and they will provide us more details on the issue that has been occurred.
Welcome everyone! Today, we delve into the world of negligence law, exploring the three crucial elements required to establish a tort of negligence. Our focus will be on the concept of legal duty with a particular emphasis on the two-stage test. So, let's get started. Our journey begins with the concept of legal duty. In negligence law, duty of care is a fundamental element. It's an obligation imposed by the law, requiring individuals to conform to a certain standard of conduct. The proximity test is a vital tool used to determine the extent of this legal responsibility based on the relationship or closeness between parties. Next up, we explore the neighbor principle, a key aspect in determining duty of care. Who qualifies as a neighbor? According to Lord Atkin in Donoghue and Stevenson, a neighbor is someone who directly affected by an act that a reasonable person would have anticipated. We see this principle in action with the case of a ginger beer manufacturer held responsible for a decomposed nail in a bottle. Transitioning to the two-stage test, we examine its significance in establishing a duty of care. Lord Wilberforce's in Ants and Matten London Borough Council case set the stage. The first stage assesses foreseeability, could harm be reasonably anticipated, and the second stage evaluates proximity, whether the relationship is close enough to justify a duty of care. We explore these stages with a case involving structural issues in a home. Moving on to our last requirement of duty of care, we touch upon the incremental test. This test, involving foreseeable damage, the neighbor principle, and fairness, justifies the existence of a duty. The Caparo Industries case illustrates the applications of this test. Here, we see how the duty of care is restricted, emphasizing the importance of understanding obligations in specific context. Remember, it's not just about foreseeability, it's about fairness, justice, and reasonability in imposing a duty of care.
Moving on to the second element of negligence, we delve into the breach of duty of care. Negligence is non-existent unless the defendant breaches the duty of care owed to the plaintiff. This breach occurs when the defendant's actions did below the minimum standard of care expected, which is assessed through the reasonable man standard. Now, you may wonder, what does this reasonable man entail? The reasonable man is no ordinary character. He embodies all qualities that we all admire: cautious, prudent, and knowledgeable. This hypothetical figure is an ordinary individual devoid of specialized skills like those of a lawyer and doctor, unless the circumstances dictate otherwise. Ladies and gentlemen, we introduce a pivotal test in determining the breach of duty of care in a specific case, the reasonable man test. This test compels us to ask, what under the circumstances would a reasonable person have foreseen? It serves as a cornerstone which is defined in the Glasgow Corporation and Muir. This case offers a harmonious blend of an impersonal and subjective assessment. It eradicates personal idiosyncrasies and operates independently of the individual in question. The reasonable man is presumed to be free from over-apprehension and overconfidence. Now, let's ground this legal discourse in a tangible scenario: the case of Muhammad Raihan bin Ibrahim and another, and the government of Malaysia and others 1981. The issue arose when the plaintiff was injured by a hoe wielded by a fellow pupil during a practical gardening class. The plaintiff contended that the defendants failed to provide adequate supervision and instructions regarding the use of gardening tools. The federal court differentiated this case from Jumat's case and deemed the defendant negligent for failing to take responsible steps to prevent injury for the plaintiff under the ARCA. The teacher's failure to inspect the tools and ensure proper positioning of the pupils led to the court holding the defendant liable for failing to prevent the foreseeable injury. This emphasized the duty of care owed to the plaintiff. So now that I have explained to you the second element of negligence, the breach of duty of care, do you now understand?
In the realm of establishing negligence, the pivotal third element that plays a defining role is damages. A robust claim pivots on the plaintiff's ability to substantiate harm resulting from the breach of duty by the defendant. This intricate process entails a nuanced examination of three foundational considerations: causations in fact, intervening acts, and causations in law. Delving into the first aspect, causations in fact, the but-for test becomes the litmus test. It scrutinizes whether the defendant's actions unequivocally stand as the direct cause of the plaintiff's injury. This litmus test poses the critical questions: will the injury have unfolded without the defendant's action? This can be seen in the case of Barnet and Chelsea, and Kensington Hospital underscores that a breach of duty, while present, might not be the primary cause of a fatality, showcasing the intricacies of causation.
The second dimension, intervening act or novus actus interveniens, delves into the intricate web of assessing the causal link between the plaintiff's damage and the breach committed by the defendant. This involves a multifaceted evaluation considering acts of nature, third-party involvement, and actions undertaken by the claimant. In the case of Karlsruhe steamship, an unforeseen storm post-collision became a limiting factor confining the defendant's liability to specific damages. Additionally, the involvement of third party, as exemplified in Baker and Willoughby, may or may not disrupt the continuity of causality, depending on the nuanced circumstances. And finally, the third dimension, causation in law or remoteness of damages, takes center stage if the defendant falls short in the but-for test and intervening act. It becomes a determining factor for establishing liability based on foreseeability. A crucial precedent in this realm is the Wigan Mount case, where the court underscored that damages must align with a reasonable foreseeability criterion for negligence to be firmly established. And that is all for damages. Thank you.
After hearing the comment from our legal expert, we can conclude that there are three issues arising in this case, which allowing Danish to take legal action against Beckham Land Theme Parks. So, the first issue arising in this case is whether Beckham Land had a duty of care toward Danish. There are several tests will be conducted to determine whether there is a duty of care between Beckham Land and Danish. The test that will be conducted is proximity test, neighbor principle, and incremental test. All these tests play a role in determining legal responsibility based on the relationship between parties. Drawing from legal precedents such as Lillian against Gold and Donahue against Stevenson, our analysis centers on how these tests have been applied in similar cases. These cases guide us in understanding when a duty of care is owed in specific circumstances. Examining Beckham Land duty of care to Danish, our legal expert argue that theme park as organisers inherently owe a duty to ensure that safety and maintenance of their rights. This duty encompasses regular inspection, maintenance practice, and the implementation of reasonable measures to prevent foreseeable accidents. In applying the proximity test, it becomes evident that a legal relationship exists between Danish and Beckham Land. As a paying visitor to the theme park and a participant on the roller coaster, Danish has a reasonable expectation of safety, creating a legal proximity. Moreover, in the neighbor principle, emphasizing foreseeability, reinforces Danish status as a neighbor to Beckham Land. The malfunctioning seatbelt directly impacts Danish safety, making him a person reasonably contemplated under this principle. Lastly, the incremental test support the duty of care owed by the Beckham Land. Foreseeability of harm, a direct and proximate relationship, and the fairness of imposing a duty of care are all present in this case. In conclusion, our legal analysis suggests that Beckham Land Theme Park owed a duty of care to Danish. The responsibility for the safety of all visitors, including Danish, falls on the shoulder of the theme park as the organizer. We will continue to follow this story closely and bring you the latest updates.
The spotlight issue of tonight is a critical examination of whether Beckham Land breached its duty of care toward Danish, leading to potential legal repercussion. To assess the breach of duty, Beckham Land must meet the standard of care, evaluating how a reasonable person will respond in the same situation. Negligence arises if the defendant falls below this minimum standard. A precedent, Muhammad Raihan bin Ibrahim and another, against Government of Malaysia and others, 1981, highlight the consequence when a duty of care is neglected, emphasizing the duty to protect individuals under the park care. In applying this to the current situation, it seems Beckham Land may have breached its duty of care toward Danish. The reasonable person test asserts that such an incident should not occur in any theme park, demanding sufficient safety measure. Danish seatbelt malfunction raise concern about the park maintenance and safety standard. Neglecting non-issue or having prior knowledge of similar malfunctions strains the case for breach of duty, suggesting Beckham Land may have abandoned his responsibilities. In conclusion, the evidence point to Beckham Land breaching its duty of care toward Danish. The failure to ensure visitor safety, coupled with potential neglect of non-concern and industry standard, result in Danish being thrown from the ride and sustaining injuries. As this investigation unfolds, the question of legal repercussions loom over Beckham Land's commitment to guaranteeing the safety of all its visitors. Stay tuned for further update on these developing stories.
The last issue that will be discussed before we end our tonight's session is whether Danish Han and his family can claim compensation for the damage suffered due to the theme park's breach of duty of care. Based on our legal expert explanation just now, even though the theme park has breached its duty of care, Danish parents can only file a lawsuit if Danish suffered damage. The legal framework to determine this include the but-for test, the concept of intervening acts, and causation in law.
Now, let's break down this legal concept. The but-for test illustrates the case courts against Kirby McLean Ltd questions whether the injury will have occurred but for the defendant breach of duty. Meanwhile, the concept of intervening act as seen in Becker's against Willoughby consider action by third parties and the claimant. In applying this to Danish case, he suffered several injuries to his head, body and a broken leg due to the seatbelt unbuckling. The but-for test indicates that had the theme park ensured secure seatbelt, Danish might not have suffered these injuries. Examining the intervening act, Danish case alike with act taken by the theme park, the defendant, who failed in their duty of care. The unforeseeable event of Danish being thrown from the roller coaster can be attributed to the theme park failure. Lastly, the cautions in law assess the possibility of damage caused by the defendant agents. In Danish case, the immediate consequence and the foreseeable act of providing a seatbelt on the roller coaster point to a failure in the duty of care.
All in all, Danish injuries resulted from the theme park failure to ensure secure seatbelts. This failure constitutes a breach of duty of care, making Beckham liable for damage suffered by Danish. Our ongoing investigation will keep you updated on any further development in this case. Thank you for joining us in this legal analysis. We will continue to closely follow about this story and provide updates as more information emerge. And don't forget to stay with TVL Part for more comprehensive coverage about the unfolding situation.
So now we further to our other news with our other colleagues. I think that's all from us. I'm Zarith,
And I'm Diana,
your favorite newsreader. Thank you.
and see you again.